Hi, summer starters. Today we're going to go over the basics of financial aid for the summer. We've gone over some of this in your entrance counseling appointments, but hopefully this will be give you some clarity on what you need to do this summer and what you need to do in the future. So, what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about scholarships. We're going to go through a step by step of financial aid. We're going to walk through some other factors to consider as you're creating a budget and how to budget. Then, we're going to walk through kind of what you need to do yearly. And finally, we're going to wrap up with your contacts, who you'll contact for what financial aid issue. So, scholarship, I mean, hopefully you know this, but your scholarship that you received is for 9 quarters. So we gave you kind of a yearly amount. If you divide that by 3, that's a quarterly amount. We'll give it for you any 9 quarters. It can be split into 10 quarters if, for example, in one of your future summers, you're here for just a few hours during the summer. We can award some part of your scholarship for those few hours and then retain the last for a 10th quarter. But the amount will be kind of your yearly amount times 3. We will automatically award it to you anytime you enroll unless you tell us otherwise. As you saw in your decision letters, there is a cumulative 275 renewal level required after your first year. Your first year is your first 3 quarters, so summer, fall, winter. So in the spring, you would have to have a cumulative 275 renewal level or cumulative 275 GPA in order to renew it. Typically, once you lose your scholarship, that is lost for good. There is kind of an exception. Most of y'all will go directly into a 4th quarter. So you will go directly into the spring quarter. When we award spring scholarships, we obviously don't have all of your first year grades yet. We won't have your summer grades yet, or sorry, your winter grades yet. And so we will use what we have, which is summer and fall. If after summer and fall you're below a 275, we won't award you scholarship. However, if after that final first year set of grades, so your winter grades come in, you're back over the 275, we will kind of retroactively award your scholarship at that point. But in after that first year, once it is lost, it's lost for good. Feel free to ask me questions if you have questions about that. If after your first 3 quarters you have a cumulative 3.6 or higher, and you came in with $24,000 or less per year, we will automatically bump you up to 8,000 a quarter, which is 24 a year. Nothing you need to do, just any quarter after those first 3 where you have a cumulative 3.6 or higher, we will bump you up to 8,000 a quarter. Once again, if you have questions about that, please let me know. All right, so each kind of your step by step for each of you. The first step, hopefully you'll have done this, is to fill out the FAFSA and complete any follow up. You have to make sure you have an FSA ID, choose Baylor, not Baylor Law as a recipient. The year is fall through summer. So for this summer, as most of you know, you had to file the 23-24 FAFSA. For the fall, you'll have to do 24-25. All law students are independent, and make sure you don't choose federal work study as an option. Even if you choose it, they won't award it to you. You've probably heard, but there's some nationwide issues with the 24-25 FAFSA. So schools are being very, very delayed in receiving those FAFSAs. So if you've submitted the 24-25 FAFSA already, but haven't heard from Baylor that you've received it or that they've received it, don't worry, they're nationwide delays. All right, so step 2 is kind of review your awards. Most of y'all saw this when you went into BearWeb. There was your cost of attendance listed, and you'll see your scholarships and your unsubsidized loan amount. That will be listed unless you've already applied for a Grad Plus. So to figure out kind of what you're eligible for, typically it's going to be 29,841 a quarter for fall through summer for full time. It does change every summer. They just listed this summer's amount. So when I created this PowerPoint, they had not yet listed this summer amount. That cost of attendance, it's not necessarily what law school is going to cost you. It is a rough estimate of what you might spend on tuition fees, housing, books, living expenses, etc. per quarter. and it's the rough estimate of what an average law student would take. An average law student takes 14 hours a quarter, so it's based on the assumption that you're taking 14 hours a quarter. That cost of attendance, that amount of aid for which you're eligible, is the same anytime you're full-time, and full-time is any time above at least 10 hours or above. So this summer, when you're taking 13 hours, you got full-time cost of attendance. Next quarter, when you're taking 12 hours, you'll get the same cost of attendance. Quarter after that, when you're taking 14 hours, you'll get the same cost of attendance. If you were taking 15 hours, you get the same cost of attendance. Um, the university is on a 2-semester, 1-summer system as opposed to the law school, which is on a 4-quarter system. So what that means is the university will package you fall through spring together, which kind of roughly align with the school's semesters, and then summer as a standalone. So if you're trying to figure out your alternative loan eligibility, you would take that cost of attendance or that budget listed minus your scholarship minus unsubsidized loan. So they'll have kind of net cost listed, which is just cost of attendance minus scholarship. And then if you take that net cost and subtract the unsubsidized loan, what remaining is your other eligibility, your alternative loan eligibility. All right, so you got to figure out, you got your cost of attendance, that 29,000-ish number. You got to figure out how to fill that. Obviously, the first chunk of that will come from scholarship. The next chunk of that will come from a federal direct unsubsidized loan. You receive a federal direct unsubsidized loan if you're a U.S. citizen just by filing a FAFSA. Basically, you file the FAFSA, the government gives you $20,500 in federal direct unsubsidized loans. Federal direct unsubsidized loans, yeah, you get $20,500 every fall through summer. There is a lifetime limit of $138,500. Typically, that 20,500 is spread out over fall through summer. However, you as summer starters, I'm sorry, I mistyped here. You will receive as much of it as you can in the summer because you're kind of at the end of the 23-24 year. It will reset in the fall and will be spread out over fall, winter, and spring. So about 68.33 per quarter. Yeah, there's no cap on this. Well, there's a 20,500 cap on this. The only other cap would be is if using that full 20,500 would push you over cost of attendance. Interest does accrue during school. It's an unsubsidized loan. So as soon as the loan disperses, it starts accruing interest. Currently it has a 7.05% fixed interest rate. Those interest rates change once a year. In July, we don't yet know next year's interest rate, but starting in the fall, there'll be a new interest rate for new loans, but they are fixed interest rates. It does have a 1.057% origination fee. That's basically a fee that the lender takes off the top of the loan. So say you had a $100 loan and a 1% origination fee, you would still owe $100 because you took a $100 loan, but you would only ever see $99 of it in your account. If you kind of take the maximum cost of attendance, your cost of attendance will be raised a little bit to account for these fees so that you can actually get aid in the full amount of cost of attendance. These have a 6-month grace period after you drop below half time, which is after you drop below 5 hours. For most of y'all, that will be when you graduate. Summers off don't count towards those 6 months. These are federal loans, so they're eligible for consolidation, different repayment plans. You don't need to worry about that too much right now. We'll talk with you about that before you graduate. But just know that this is the primary federal loan that everybody takes. So you've got your cost of attendance, first chunk scholarship, next 20,500 in federal direct unsubsidized loans. The next or the remaining chunk, you have options between Graduate Plus or a state or private alternative loan. Graduate Plus is the most common. It's a federal loan. You do have to apply for it at studentaid.gov. There's no annual cap other than cost of attendance minus other aid. Interest accrues during school. These always have a 1% higher interest rate than the unsubsidized loans. So currently 8.05 fixed interest rate. Once again, that will change with the new batch in July. These have a higher origination fee, so a little bit, above 4%, which means you'll only see about 96% of what you take out. However, your cost of attendance will be raised if you take out Grad Plus, so that you're actually receiving the cost of attendance after origination fees. These also have a 6-month grace period after you drop below half time. They're federal, so they're eligible for consolidation, different repayment plans, forgiveness. The only requirement for this is that you can't have adverse credit, meaning essentially you can't be bankrupt or in default on other loans. You don't have to have a certain credit score. They're not need-based. If for some reason you are denied, you either can fix your adverse credit or get a cosigner. The vast majority of our students choose to fill that kind of remaining bucket with Graduate Plus loans. Okay, another choice though, state and private alternative loans. There's information about this on the financial aid website or on our website. These might have variable or fixed interest rate. They have a variety of origination fees, a variety of credit requirements. They're not eligible for consolidation or repayment plans typically because they're not federal loans. Seeing fewer and fewer students do these, but if you have a really great credit score, certainly encourage you to look at the terms of those loans. If you are planning to use VA benefits, that's another option. You'll need to work with the VA benefits office. I always recommend that you do that in plenty of time. Just note that the VA does not send aid until after the term begins. However, if you've done what you need to, they will kind of estimate that aid that you're going to get, and they'll mark it towards your balance. I mentioned this before, but financial aid will not award you federal work study even if you select that. The exception to that would require discussion with Associate Dean Corden. So to recap what I just said, your cost of attendance is the amount of aid that you can get. For this summer, it's about 30,000. First chunk of that will come from scholarship, the next 20,500 federal direct unsubsidized loans, then anything else that you would need. You could do a Grad Plus or a state or private alternative. And then in the fall, you'll be packaged for fall through spring. So cost of attendance will be about 90,000, your scholarship, unsubsidized, and then the remainder Grad Plus or private or state alternative. Okay. All right. So after you accept your unsubsidized loans, after you've applied for Grad Plus, you have to sign master promissory notes and complete entrance counseling. BearWeb will always tell you what you need to do. You only have to do this for the first time you're doing these loans at Baylor. So it's not something you'll have to do every quarter, but you do need to make sure that you take care of those items. And then kind of the last big step is to settle your account. So always kind of as soon as possible, 90 days before the term, you can apply for a Graduate Plus, a Texas Cal, a private loan. Graduate Plus loans have not yet opened for the 24-25 year. Everything having to do with federal aid is a little delayed for this next year. So you won't be able to apply for those yet, but sometime later in the summer, you'd be able to apply for a next year Graduate Plus loan. Bills are going to be generated the beginning of the month after you register. So y'all registered in April, so bills are generated beginning of May. You will register, I believe, in June for the fall, so bills will be generated at the beginning of July. It's always tied to when you register. Loans typically are going to appear as anticipated aid 2 weeks before the start date. I know there were some delays this quarter. After this quarter, you can always count as loans appearing in your e-bill as anticipated aid 2 weeks before the start date. And then typically 10 days, sometimes a week before the start date, loans and your refund will disperse. They'll take all the loans and scholarships, they'll apply it to your balance, and then the excess will be refunded to you. Typically, loans will appear in your bank account, kind of the excess loans will appear in your bank account 5 days before the start date each quarter. Kind of count on that timeline each quarter. 10 days before classes start, aid disperses. 5 days before classes start, if you set up direct deposit, the excess is in your bank account. The balance is always due at the end of the month after you register. I mentioned in the summer you're registering in June, so the bill will be due at the end of July. Obviously, your aid will not have dispersed in July, but as long as you have anticipated aid, as long as they can see it coming, that you've done what you need to, you'll be all set. If you don't aren't settled by that date, don't panic. There's a $25 per month late fee if you're not settled by the date. You will not be dropped from classes though, so you don't need to panic. The only issue is if you don't settle by the time you need to register for next quarter's classes, there'll be a hold. You won't be able to register. So you do want to take care of it, but it's nothing you need to panic about. If you have questions about your registration or holds or anything like that, come see me. Come see Jerry Cunningham in our registrar's office. All right, so some things to think about. You've probably heard this before, but we encourage you to live like a law student now so that you can live like a lawyer later. Y'all have experienced the cost of books. Books are expensive, but there's some ways to kind of minimize those expenses. You'll see kind of a book exchange once you get here. You'll realize that a lot of books are for multiple quarters. You'll figure out what books you need to buy from the bookstore, what you can kind of do more used books. You'll figure all that out. But yes, books will be an expense as you're building your budget, so you want to think about that. Another few expenses to think about are expenses related to the bar exam. So here in Texas, if you're going to be licensed to become an attorney, you actually start that process as a 1L. Y'all will hear about this from the Board of Law Examiners next week, or in a couple weeks, no, next week. So you have to do something called a declaration of intent to practice law. If you do that as a 1L, it costs $190. They basically are starting a background check, fingerprinting, all of that. If you wait until after that deadline, which you're fine to do, it's an additional $150. So I typically tell people if you think at all that you want to take the bar exam in Texas in 3 years, I think it's worth doing now. And then in your 3L year, when you're getting ready to take the bar exam, you have to register to take the bar exam. That is $350 by the priority deadline. If you miss that priority deadline, it's an additional $150. And then to prepare for the bar exam, most people take a commercial bar prep class, Themis, Barbary, Kaplan, or kind of the big three. Those can cost several $1,000s. If you work with one of these organizations while you're in law school, sometimes you can get a discount. Barbary will actually be here during orientation, talk to them about how you can potentially get a discount in 3 years. Another thing you'll need to keep in mind is laptop expenses. Hopefully y'all have laptops. As you know, not laptops in first year classes for the most part, but you will likely take laptops or take your finals on a laptop. You'll make your outlines, you'll prepare for finals on your laptop. Inevitably, some of y'all will have laptops that will die, that will break down at some point during law school. So be thinking about how you would cover that in your budget at some point in law school. And then, getting into your 2L and 3L year, thinking about a suit, multiple suits for practice court, thinking about maybe interview and travel expenses as you're interviewing for different jobs. Those are some things to just keep in mind as you're building a budget. All right, so some other ways to get money other than scholarships and loans. Summer off-quarter clerkships, that's the biggest way. So next summer, most of y'all will take off, and the summer after that as well. A lot of times, kind of depending what you do, if you're not doing kind of public interest work, you can make some decent money. And we certainly encourage public interest work. There are stipends to go with public interest work, but if you're working for a private company or for a firm, you can often make pretty good money. We encourage you to still continue to live frugally, save some of that money to defray your expenses in future years. We publish a periodic list of private scholarships and writing competitions. Pay attention to those. We hear over and over again that there's really not much competition for those. Um, excuse me. I also encourage you to check into the Access Lex Scholarship Data Bank. If you haven't done that already, it's a great data bank of private law scholarships. You can filter, you can sort by a bunch of different things. That's another good way to make a little extra money. I've already mentioned kind of the GPA based after first year scholarships. There are a few things called Law Day Awards, nothing you would apply for, but if you do really well in a particular class or on a particular team or on law review, there are a few kind of small monetary awards at an award ceremony at the end of each year. And then I encourage you to check with your hometown bar association. Check with your parents or your spouses bar or local bar association. Check with any civic organization that you or a spouse or a parent are involved with. A lot of times they'll have small scholarships as well. It's a good way to make a little bit of extra money. All right, so kind of what you need to do, when you need to do it. You have to walk through the applying for loans process, processing loans every fall through summer or every fall through spring and every summer. So y'all will get good at it because you'll do it here in the summer and then you'll do it again in the fall. Then you won't have to do it again unless you take classes next summer until next summer, but otherwise not again until you're applying for um, aid for the next year for your 2L year. Um, I encourage you to look at Access Lex Max sessions. There's information about that on the orientation webpage. There's also something called Access Connects, which is a service that Access Lex offers, free individualized loan counseling for law students. Take advantage of that as well. Save for future expenses. I mentioned what some of those expenses might be during law school. So don't just, if you can, be kind of squirreling away some money for those future expenses. And then adjust your loans based on experience. If you don't need that full cost of attendance, but took out full cost of attendance one quarter, don't feel like you need to take out the full cost of attendance next quarter. You can always adjust. And then the last thing that people ask about is deferring other loans, other maybe undergrad or grad school loans while they're in law school. Um, most of your um, excuse me, most of your um, loans or lenders will be part of something called the clearinghouse. The clearinghouse is this big service that everybody goes and checks. We basically will submit a list of here's who's enrolled every quarter. The lenders will check that list, and if they see you're enrolled, you'll automatically be deferred. Feel free to call your lender and ask if they're a part of the loan clearinghouse. If they're not, ask them for an in-school deferment form. I can fill that out. Jerry Cunningham can fill that out. Michael can fill that out. We can take care of that for you. All right, and then the very last thing for general clarifying questions, kind of your first stop about anything financial aid, please come to me, please come to Michael. We can troubleshoot those for you. If you have specific account questions that we can't help you with, because aid is packaged on main campus, there's One Stop Student Financial Services over on main campus. You can also see their phone numbers and their kind of email form there. If you ever have a less than positive experience with the financial aid office, please let me know. I'd love to kind of help you troubleshoot that, help kind of get answers for you on my end. And that is pretty much it. If you ever have any questions about financial aid, you know where to find me. Thanks.